Hey everybody, this is Christina Kay, award-winning tech lover with a passion for helping brands create interactive, user-generated content. And you're listening to the Trust Factor podcast, the pod that amplifies brand stories that matter. Let's power the shopper's journey with trust. Do you have the Trust Factor? Listen and find out. Today on the Trust Factor podcast, we have the honor of having the ever-talented Alicia Esposito, VP of Content and Retail TouchPoints, part of the G3 Communications family. So how are you doing today, Alicia?
Hi, I'm doing great, Christina. Thank you so much for having me.
So welcome. And I am just so excited to have you on this podcast just because I know we've talked previously on yours and then also at the Retail TouchPoints conference. I'm really excited to talk about this more in depth. But let's hear a little bit about you. So let's hear about Retail TouchPoints, G3 Communications, and everything about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the VP of Content, like you said, for Retail TouchPoints and essentially its entire ecosystem. So we started as just a website and digital newsletter back in, I want to say 2011, 2010. And now we are a full-blown media network and community. So I oversee all of our web properties, our podcasts, which you mentioned, as well as our video series, but also our events. So we have our Retail Innovation Conference and Expo, which takes place every year. It started as a small scale conference. Now it's a full-blown event and expo, which is very exciting. Also a bit overwhelming, but in my role, I just oversee the content strategy, alignment across all properties, and just ensuring that we're incorporating community feedback and insights from our audience to guide all of those content decisions. And that's part of G3, like you said, which is a B2B marketing and publishing company. Our sister publication is Demand Gen Report, which is focused on B2B marketing and sales.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I love the whole team over there from the Demand Gen Report team, as well as the TouchPoints. I feel like I talk to you guys the most, and I absolutely love working with you. So if you guys aren't subscribed to either of those, depending on what lane you're in, definitely head over there and check that out. But we're going to get into the nitty gritty, and I am so excited to talk all about this because I feel like it's pretty timely with holidays coming up and the end of the year. I can't believe it's around the corner, really. And I'm like, how is it September? I am excited for the outfit change, though, because I'm definitely a fall fashion girl. So I am excited for that.
Yeah, I'm a Virgo. It's full-blown Virgo season. Yep. I'm ready for it. I'm good.
A lot of my close friends in my life are like Scorpios, so they're very ready for Scorpio season, as they all always are. But I'm a Gemini, so I definitely am ready. I'm not ready, but I just had mine a couple months ago, so I can't be selfish. But so let's get into talking about trust and online shopping habits and just e-commerce tech in general. So with the year wrapping up, coming up, how do you see online shopping habits changing in 2023? What things do retailers need to be ahead of or planning for in their strategies?
Yeah, and I think those shifts in shopping behaviors really ties in nicely to this notion of trust. And what does this mean in the world of e-commerce when you have access to so many options all the time, whether it be products, brands, platforms, right? Like we're just surrounded by commerce opportunity, and that's great. But I think sometimes too, it creates this predicament for consumers of, okay, who do I trust? Who is the ultimate provider or the key destination for my needs? So I think that's why we'll continue to see this convergence of commerce, content, and community. And that's why we're really seeing social platforms really become core connecting points for consumers to discover brands, to learn from each other even about what brands they should be considering, what brands they should be trying out, and most of all, trusting. So I think with that, retailers really need to be thinking about like how they show up in all of these places, both owned platforms as well as those organic and even paid opportunities through those different platforms. It's tricky because even though like social networks are super powerful, apps like TikTok, Instagram, even Be Real, right? Like they all create these new avenues for brands to possibly connect with consumers in more authentic ways. But I think the reality of it is like, these are walled gardens. They all exist in their own standalone ecosystem. As you're thinking about those standalone point strategies, it's really key to think about how it all ladders up to your own brand experiences, like how it connects to your e-commerce site, how it connects to your newsletter or other services that you provide, because otherwise you're not creating that seamless journey that so many consumers expect now. So in a nutshell, just like that, creating that full circle effect for consumers and creating those opportunities for them to discover, to learn about products and just validate those decisions through those content opportunities that make the most sense for them.
And I love what you said, and I wrote it down, but I think I missed the first C. But I think you said content, community, and commerce.
That's it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that because I'm definitely an alliteration person, but I also just think it's so true. And it's not just for like retail, it's for really anybody in that like B2B e-commerce, maybe like beauty e-commerce and not D2C space, just because we really do have to have that authentic voice because people see through it, especially now. And if you're not saying the same things or acting, I guess you could say, the same way that you are like organically or paid wise, people will see that and then they'll see that disconnect and kind of be confused with your brand. So you really have to have that pull through each one. And I feel it's super important when we're talking about that things could get blurry in the sense of data and people could be worried about having everything out in the public, or there might be some pushback when it comes to consumer data collection, especially for marketing and with cookies. And now we're seeing that maybe cookie-less world. What ways are you seeing brands use zero to third-party data in good ways? And what do you suggest marketers do to establish trust with sensitive information or online habits?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really powerful point because I think at the end of the day, we all know that our data is being used. Not just, it used to be just people in the industry, marketers, retail executives, like if they experienced it in their day to day, they were able to connect those dots. But now these advertising methods and these platforms are pretty open about how they use this data. Like it's not an unheard of thing now. So I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to the value that brands are creating. And there's always been that execution gap, I guess you could say, right? Like brands and retailers are saying that they're personalizing, that they are using data. And then consumers always tend to say, oh, you could probably do a better job. Like I wish they did more. So I think closing that gap a little bit, focusing on creating opportunities of added value, even joy, like using that data is going to be crucial. But I think an interesting layer to the conversation is the role that proactive communication, transparency, and control play in all of this, especially as brands and retailers try to build out their first, or some say even zero party data strategy. There's actually this research that I came across for a report that I did on this very topic from this company Consent, and they showed two sides of the coin, right? Like they surveyed US consumers and they also surveyed marketers. And the big takeaway was consumers do want that control. 66% thought it was very important, not just like that broad pool of, oh yeah, it's important, I would like to do that. They said this is critical to give me control over that information that companies get access to, right? Like they want to know that it's being used in a way that's relevant for them. And 61% even said they prefer when a brand communicates how long they keep that information on file, how long they'll use it for. So I think there's that big communication gap and opportunity, especially as brands and retailers try to rev up their personalization strategies and really find unique ways to differentiate through those opportunities. And I think it's just about like how you use it, right? Like how you're using it in a way that creates value and creates delight for the consumers. And like I've had a few really powerful examples, but it's funny because overall I just see a lot of the same methods that we've been covering since honestly like early 2010, maybe before that. So we're getting there, but I would like to see a bit more progression.
Yeah. And I recently had a conversation with someone like over this and talking about how we always talk about, personalize their experience, especially by their shopping habits. But when we were talking about it, I'm like, what brands are using that like internally to really maybe look at is the like main buyer they're thinking the actual main buyer? Like when are you refreshing those methods and seeing those habits change? Are those changing? Because I feel in different industries or in different retail stores, especially like for us, one of our customers is Zenny. And I feel it's generational, but it's generational changing. So it's some people who are like that older generation, and then the people who are maybe new to the workforce and they're just now like having money and having the ability to make their own decisions for glasses. I know that sounds so crazy, and like thinking about the messaging that way, but then also seeing where is that main generational shopper at and really doing that internal audit. Because I feel we sometimes assume we know our buyer, but we have the data to look at it. So why don't we like really use it? And I'm totally with you in the sense of need to get new or refresh in the sense, because I get the same emails like the leaving items in a cart and things like that. And it's just, I ignore those at this point. And I know it sounds awful, but that's the truth.
Yeah. And I think even if that is like the core intention or objective for a brand, right? Like your goal is to recover those abandoned carts, get people back to the site. I think there's more that can be done beyond like subject line, hey, you left this in your cart. Okay, I know this. Like I looked at it up like for a reason.
Exactly.
I actually saw a really great example from Truly, which is like an ethical like beauty, skincare, body care brand. And they sell through like Ulta through wholesale, but I like their direct to consumer site because like they have these really fun bundles and they have a really diverse product assortment. So I was looking at a specific product. I think it was like a shaving oil or something. Had it in my cart and I was like, you know what? I don't need to replenish this just yet. I'm going to go do something else. I got a follow-up email and it wasn't just, hey, you left this in your cart, but it was something along the lines of, hey, shop the entire bundle. Because like they're big on like routine or like 3-step processes, which I think is really effective if you're super into that category. So I was able to see, oh, look, like this is part of something like much bigger and you can buy the whole bundle and save like X number of dollars or X%. That was a pretty creative way to tie in the financial incentive, but also teach me something about that broader product set. Again, it's like the same objective, but executed in a way that feels a bit more helpful and valuable
like
for me.
Care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel that too, it gets them a higher chance of you coming back as a customer, as well as just getting you into the routine of Truly products. Like when you think of your shower routine,
right?
You think of that. And that's such a smart way to do that, just because as I'm getting like older, I feel I'm very particular about like my shaving routine and things like that. And if all products work together, just like Truly does and how they market it, just like you said with the email, that's a perfect way to segment that. And I feel even with the generations after us and the generations that have grown up with tech, they're expecting that. And it's something that I feel I could do better at as a marketer. And then also just those brands that are very stagnant. Right. And Gen Z has a lot to say, and we know that. And we have to talk to them, get their feedback, and really hear about their experiences to help other brands or help new brands, because essentially they're going to be the new buyers in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
They're all about that personal experience, being authentic. So I feel Gen Z is the generation of it's okay to be you. With millennials and like elder millennials like me, it was you have to be this like certain type to be cool or something like that. And I feel it's really neat that Gen Z is adopting this authentic, personalized lifestyle just because we all need it and it's refreshing. And besides Truly, do you know of or can you think of any brands that are doing personalized, authentic experiences really well?
Yeah, there are actually a few that really come to mind for me. I think Elf Beauty always does such a good job. And I feel like anytime I'm on a podcast, I talk about them. I'm like geeking out about everything they do because they have this standardized process for using data to fuel their marketing strategy. Like they develop these really tailored nurtures. They create streams that get people to join the loyalty program, have unique journeys for loyalty members, but it also have those behavioral streams as well, which I find to be super effective. But they do a really nice job of tapping into that need for self-expression, like you were talking about, in a broader context, like through the partnerships they have. They just did a really fun collaboration with Dunkin' Donuts, and they did a new product line and activation that brought in members of the gaming community. Like they just have this way of looking at the broader context of the consumer and like who they are, like all of those different interests they have, what communities they're like members of. And they find these points of interest and find ways to activate it through their marketing, through their partnerships, through product development. Like when they started on TikTok, they did that really fun Spotify track, just have like a way of tapping into that deep customer understanding and just really letting their creativity fly. So I'm always loving the work that they do there. Crocs, like, hello, like these past 2 years have been like the great redemption of Crocs, which I will own. I always made fun of Crocs. I've made fun of my friends who wore Crocs, but like over this past year, especially, I'm like, damn, they really know what they're doing.
Yes. And I was in the elevator the other day at my apartment, and I saw 4 people in the elevator wearing them. And I was like, and I just giggled to myself. I'm like, they must be doing something right.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Let's talk to their marketing team.
Yeah, because they have like really fun partnerships, right? And in all walks of life, all levels of celebrity, all different like niches, I guess you could say. Like they're gibbets. They can do personalization and like really express yourselves through those little charms like that you put in like the little crock holes.
Yeah.
Is that the technical term?
I don't know. We can call it that. I like that though. That's awesome.
But their app like provides all of these great opportunities to bring the brand promise to life through technology. So like AR try on, people can build their own like gibbets pack, like picking the things that they love. They do like exclusive content drops through the app. There was always this big debate of to create an app or not. The consensus is to create an app if you have something distinct and valuable to provide to your audience. And they've nailed that equation. I think the final one I'll bring up is Bubble. So they're a Gen Z skincare brand. They have been growing pretty quickly. I think they're going into a few mass drugstore retailers, and they've made an intentional decision to be in drugstores versus other paths for accessibility. Gen Z, like they're like taking trips with their parents to the drugstore. Drugstores are close to college campuses. They're relatively more affordable in comparison to more luxury retailers. But they have a brand advisory board that is made up of members of their community. And this community has shaped everything for the brand. The content that they create, the marketing that they do, the products they develop, and even how they decided to expand. So that's a very strategic, foundational way of tapping into Gen Z and like showing, okay, we're presenting ourselves in a way that's relevant for you. But I think it's still a really inspirational way for in B2B marketing. We talk about buyer-focused strategy and like knowing your audience. So it's just a really effective way to show how that's carried through in a brand sense.
Yeah. And I've never really thought about it in that way because I'm heavily in the B2B world, like in the tech side of it, but a lot of our customers are like D2C or obviously B2C, but having a consumer, I guess you can say consumer advisory board, helping you lead that product development, innovation, and things like that. Because for us, it really helps us with focus groups and saying, hey, we're going to be rebranding. This is what we're thinking about. Like, how does that resonate with you? And I do that a lot with HubSpot, for instance. And when I see those changes that I've influenced, I feel special. And so having that on that D2C retail side is even more important, I feel, because at that point, there's so many different places you can shop from. And being a special part of the brand will almost get you a forever fan or a forever buyer from that generation. And then their friends will buy as well, just because they'll talk about it so much because they're so influenced by their insights and their voice within that brand. So I'm going to switch our chat a little bit. We've talked a lot about online experiences and things like that. So let's switch it to in-store or even like at home shopping. And with the pandemic a little bit ago when it started, we obviously were just shopping online, but a lot of brands have switched their thinking of bringing that store to you. So how do you see in-store experiences like virtual shopping and consultants, but having that at home? How do you see that changing the landscape of retail?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as we think about like the future of services and what that looks like. Like we've seen some brands test like Zoom meetings or like virtual consultations. I do think that's going to play a role for certain brands, really powerful for healthcare or wellness and even pet care. Like Chewy is like killing the game right now because they're tapping into the telemedicine. So I think that could be a really interesting model, especially if you have highly considered purchase or like something that ties significantly into health and wellness. But I think the one question like I've been debating and we've been discussing on the editorial team at Retail Touchpoints is like, where does that start? And then when does it turn into a live shopping or a live stream strategy? Because I don't have the answer. I would love your thoughts on that. I think to do live streaming effectively, of course, there's like the huge mass like shopping festivals, which obviously Alibaba has nailed, but now we're seeing Amazon try it. We're seeing other brands test it. But I feel like there's an opportunity to do that on a smaller scale. And it's more around like product drops, like new fall outfits, but it has to be like intentional and thoughtful. But I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts or experiences with like live streaming and how that maybe differentiates from like a more one-to-one virtual service. I'll say I haven't done like a virtual consultation. So I don't know if you have any experience there.
Yeah. So actually there's one technology that comes to mind and another brand that does it really well. So the app is called Hero. Klarna bought them. So I don't know if they changed the name or rebranded, but
I remember that.
Yep. So essentially it's in-store like shopping, but virtually. So they have that live streaming, but one-to-one approach. And I think it's going to be hot for a little bit, to be honest, but people really like the tangible factor of like feeling things. Like for me, I'm such especially when it comes to handbags, I want to feel it. I want to feel it before I buy it. And there's a brand, Hammett, they do an amazing job in the sense of the live shopping aspect. And I feel they just hit it on the head just because they really take those consumer insights. And even if you haven't shopped with them before, they're asking those questions to make you feel like you're shopping with them. And I think it's all about the approach and how you're talking to them instead of having it a salesy type of conversation. If you do it as a friend, the buyer will be more open to answer those questions because it is a new thing. And I'm not saying this type of experience is for everybody because I feel older generations and even like me and like my group of friends would be, I don't know about it because we love that experience of going to the mall for hours as teenagers. And so being able to transfer that. But I'm in the same boat with you in the sense of I'm still trying to figure out where those lines get crossed in a sense, because not every house in the US or the world is going to have a virtual reality headset. And like, how can you make it as real as possible with just like your phone and like FaceTime or whatever you use? So I feel it's definitely going to be a thing that's going to be changing the game, but I feel we still have to figure out where that line is, but also how can brands make it still that authentic approach like we talked about? Because I feel just virtually it might be a little difficult.
Yeah. I think the one thing that this all ladders up to is that even when shopping virtually or digitally, consumers want to feel connected to the brand. That means connecting to individuals, whether it be service representatives or influencers or even store employees. And I think the associate angle could be a really big opportunity, like a way for brands and retailers to test these different models or test these different channels and still have a central point of reference, right? Yep. Like Kids Foot Locker sees their associates, or like they call them stripers, which is super cute.
I love
that. They see their stripers as like the representation of the brand, how the brand shows up, of course, in the store, but they're also featuring them in TikToks. They're featuring them in Instagram stories and social posts. And I think it's a good way to create that continuity. Okay, these are our people, like these are the tastemakers, these are the ones that like know like the newest products, like we can trust them. And I think that's interesting since they're targeting Gen Alpha, which is after Gen Z and their parents, because like their parents are like our age, right? Like they like going to the store, they like talking to someone, they like weighing their options. So it kind of ticks that box. And then for Gen Alpha, it's, like the associate is doing like a TikTok challenge and like showing off like these new sneakers. Like that's so fun. It's like showing up in a way that's relevant for both. I don't know. I think that's a kind of interesting way to address it.
Oh yeah. And you sparked so many things in my brain when you were just talking, because we like mentioned influencers. I was like, wait, so what brands could do is see what influencer their customers love and have them, like, they can sign up for times to shop with blank influencer name. And that could probably increase like purchases. And then when you're talking about employee, I have talked to someone recently, I don't remember, but basically, and this is more on the B2B side, but it's definitely the same for B2C and direct to customer brands, is the employee advocacy side, because you like hit the nail on the head on that trust side of it. Because if employees of whatever brand is talking about it and excited about it and just being themselves, but with the brand like backing them, it's going to pull through with a more trusted voice because it's coming from a person versus the brand. Even though there's a person behind the brand writing that stuff, there's a difference between it. And I know on the B2B side, there's a company, Gong, who, I think it was Gong or was it Alice? Both of them have incredible employee advocacy programs. It's producing like $500K in pipeline, just like with their employee advocacy side. And that's a way for brands to also coach their employees, whether that be at Foot Locker or a B2B company, on personal branding. Talk to them like, what are their goals and things like that, because that's going to get employee retention up. You're going to get people wanting to stay working for your company because it feels like you care and like about what their wants are versus what they can do for your business. Right. And having that trusted person or that fun TikTok dance with the new Nikes or the new Yeezys that were dropped, I don't know. It's, for me, like I would probably buy it more from that versus just an ad I see on TikTok or an ad I see on Instagram. I think that's going to be super interesting coming up because I'm a marketer and I buy from ads all the time. I'm like, what am I doing? But then sometimes I'm like, I'll just go right to the site so I'm not taking away from their budget.
Oh, that's awful.
I'm like, I'll just do that. But I'm like, do people do that for mine or no? Probably not. So I like think about it that way. But goodness, it's so funny. If you could give people some strategies on that retention piece or that getting buyers to come back, would you say it's on the personalized experiences? Would you say if it's maybe influencer marketing, with it being on SMS, things like that? What would you say that magic little, I call it pixie dust, but what's that magic pixie dust that you think people can use for shoppers to come back to the brand and be that brand that they shop at?
I think it all chalks up to just being helpful, which is a non-answer. But I think in terms of actually executing upon that, like what that looks like, I think creating as many possible entry points or opportunities for consumers to engage with the brand and mapping out what that entire journey looks like. So if you're doing SMS, like what is the intention or goal behind that? Are you just going to be like pushing coupon codes to people because you're going to be annoying real fast? You know what I mean? So I think making sure that the channels you use are helpful, are intentional, and ladder up to your broader brand mission or purpose, and then developing those next steps, like what that path to purchase, so to speak, looks like, or path to retention and loyalty, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. Once someone makes that purchase, what are you doing next to keep them engaged and keep them centralized into your story? I feel like we're at this really interesting juncture in retail in particular, and it's probably a bit ironic since all of the focus is on issues around inflation and consumers feeling a bit more price sensitive and mindful of how they're buying things and what they're buying. But I think it creates a really big opportunity for companies to zero in on their brand purpose and how they want to show up in the world. I've been doing a lot of like research and thinking about what brand is, like what it really means and how it can fuel everything in a retailer's strategy, so that if they do need to increase prices or they do need to pare back on offers, there is that experience that feels special, different, and valuable for the consumer. And that's what keeps people coming back for more, right? There are some like habitual purchases that you have to make, like everybody needs toilet paper or everyone needs certain products like that. Yeah. But what separates your brand from others? I don't know. I feel like that was a bit of a non-answer. I apologize. But I think it really comes down to what you want to stand for in the world and making sure you're creating those opportunities to engage with your brand in the most meaningful way possible.
I think it's a great answer because I think about it being helpful, but also like memorable. And when you are helpful and memorable, you'll be the brand that people will go to because there's so many options out there, even for toilet paper, laundry detergent, things like that. And you just want to be that helpful brand and having experiences, whether that be in store, online, whatever it is, it definitely should be consistent and that's how you can tie in the memorable and helpful part of your strategies. And I love what you said about really researching about what is a brand essentially, or how can that truly be the foundation of your business. And some people don't think about that because they think about just sales and how to get like higher shopping carts, things like that. But really thinking about that brand and that brand message is incredibly important because it's something that people will latch onto and essentially remember. And then they'll be like, okay, yes, X brand was super helpful. And I love the experience with them, from searching for the products to that tracking and getting that product. There's so many different experiences that can come up with that or come with those different steps that you have to be always listening and be that helpful brand that people love.
Yeah. A really fun example, and I don't mean to drone on and on about this. Like we were talking about habitual purchases, right? Like the things that you always need. Sometimes like those are the most interesting categories to look into because you can really see which brands shine through. And we had the CMO of Smile Direct Club at our event this past May. They're a really interesting company because they started out in a very specific area of healthcare or dental care, which was the straightening kits that they have. So they democratized that whole experience. They made it affordable, turnkey. They opened their smile shops. Now they're in full blown CPG. Like they have direct to consumer e-commerce, but now they're selling through wholesale. So they have a very interesting approach. Like they're doing whitening strips, they're doing toothpaste, they're doing toothbrushes, other products. So they've been building up their portfolio of these normal everyday products. And he basically said up front, like we're essentially a challenger brand in this category. Like we're going up against the Crest, we're going up against these like really established big CPG houses. And we have to find great ways to differentiate and create value and engagement with our consumer base. And wholesale is a way for us to just show up like in that shelf set, but it's other things like their bundling and subscription services. It's how they use personalization, their creative TikTok ads, like all of that stuff comes into play to reaffirm how that brand is different from everything else. So if you're interested, I encourage you to look into their story and how they're going about growth, because it was just like a really interesting way that they tackled that whole space.
And that's so interesting because that made me also think of another brand you mentioned about bundling and like a system in the sense with Truly. And if you think about skincare, you're going to think about it the same way with your teeth. And you really want that whole system in place. And so I feel that's such a smart way that they're going about it. And especially having Smile Direct Club, like on the shelf, you see it. Cause like when you think about it, I think of straightening kits and things like that. And so when you see it there, it helps you plant a seed and then it pushes you through that system. If you're using Smile Direct Club already and you're like, you see the toothpaste, you're most likely probably going to pick that up because you're like, oh, this probably goes well with my routine, because dental care in general is pretty expensive. And I will say Smile Direct Club makes it affordable for us. And it's such a cool way to think about it. And that's one session I did not attend. So I would go back and
go check that out
for sure. Another brand that I thought of when we were talking about this, about like personalized and like the everyday needed things. And this is not everybody needs this. This is mostly for women, but with sticks, because with that, it's such sensitive products. And a lot of them are on their site or with like their catalog, but how they do things, if you get like a pregnancy test and you say it's like negative or positive, whether it's a happy thing or a sad thing for you, they listen to that and they're not going to send you like a congrats email. That's so important with that sensitive type of really anything, I guess you can say, because you just really never know. And they just do a really good job with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's using the data intentionally just to close the loop on this entire conversation. And like, I know they also do like quizzes, right? Like you can share information about what your challenges are, like you have a specific problem, like how do you want your health to improve? And that's the jumping off point. That's how you get into relationship, so to speak, with the brand. But I think all of those little breadcrumbs or like data points, that is used to guide their strategy. And that's really what it comes down to.
That's so awesome. And I love learning from different brands and like reading different books. So I am going to throw a little random question out to you just for our listeners to maybe get some reading materials on their bookshelf. If they're like me, I have a wait list of so many books, but if you could say one book to read that you just finished, what is one book that people should read or add to their list?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you a couple. So
go ahead.
I think even if you're like just not in retail, not retail specific, but Adam Grant's book, Think Again, is so good because I think we're like in this era of like volatility, constant change. And I think also isolation, right? Like we all are like figuring out how to like better speak with each other, like with empathy and understand. And we also have like our own innate biases and like feelings of what's the right thing to do, whether it be like in life, family, business. So he just like really provides a great model for like how to have tough conversations, how to admit that maybe you're wrong and like it wasn't the best solution or way about doing things. So I think in general, just like collaboration and problem solving, Adam Grant's Think Again was really great. I also have been like reading a lot of future of tech and like how tech impacts. I actually finished a science fiction book that's really interesting. So it's called Upgrade and it's by Blake Crouch. And he's done a few science fiction books, but this one was about genetic upgrades. So we talk about like tech innovation and how it impacts the way we live, obviously the way we shop, but this was like an extreme view of what could very well be possible in the future. So if you're like me and you like to think about those things and you get a little philosophical about it all, it's a nice way to be a little scared, but there's also a nice tie into like just how mankind operates and how we need to lean into empathy. And next on my list is actually from Ali Krigsman, co-founder of Bulletin, which was recently acquired by Emerald. So Emerald is our new parent company. G3 got acquired a few years back. And her book is all about just like building her empire. It's called literally How to Build a Goddamn Empire. Bulletin is a really inspirational company because the whole model is like a digital platform to connect independent brands and independent retailers. So it's like a wholesale platform that like brings community into the equation too. So I don't know. It was just, I love hearing about solutions that are actually making an impact, supporting growing businesses. And it's funny, I've had the book, I haven't started it. And then we heard that they were now part of our entire parent company. And I was just, wow, like what a full circle moment. And just like showing how our business is supporting the retail community more holistically. Yeah, it was just like a really exciting moment for me. Because I'm like, wow, like we're a part of something really exciting. And at this juncture, retail is changing so much. And there are also so many new brands, like ones that are disrupting categories and driving positive change. So it was just a really nice full circle moment for me. Yeah, support growing businesses and support independent retail.
That's so awesome. And when I saw that, I think I saw the announcement and I was reading into it and I was like, this is so cool. And I was like really excited for you guys because I feel having that, the independent retailers that they work with is, they sometimes don't get as much of a voice than the bigger ones do just because they're outshined in a sense. But I love that this is a thing. And I know there's like other organizations or like foundations that are like it, but I was reading more into her specifically. And I love it. And I'm definitely adding that to my list because one, I love the title of it and I'm like on my way to doing that, I think. And so I just love that so much. So besides all of those books that you mentioned and those people and things like that, I just want to thank you so much for your time. But if there's one person that you would love to listen to on a podcast about retail strategies and trust, who would that be?
Oh, I'm probably going to sound like such a stereotype, but I love anything that Scott Galloway has to say about industry, about what makes a profitable business. And I think now, especially like we're seeing a lot of brands look at their revenue models, look at how profitable their businesses are. And I think he owns when he's not right. Like he makes the joke that he's like wrong most of the time. But I think just like how he breaks down the economics of business, like how brands can find their value prop, what that means, I think that's where he really shines, like the brand strategy side. So getting his take on like what the new keys to brand strategy may look like. Is it still like the foundational stuff that he's always been talking about or other new considerations? I think that would be super fun.
That's super interesting. Thank you so much. And listeners, you got so many good points to go off of. I have, and I really look forward to having Alicia back on the podcast. But for now, I really hope you guys are taking what she said and going with it because having that trust factor is super important. Thank you so much. Have a great day.